Hi guys, welcome to the channel. This video is going to be about saturation, and I've been playing around with saturation with different mixing approach. I've been watching some YouTube videos recently, and I've actually learned a lot of cool new things and techniques which I'm going to share with you today. So if you are looking for a way to improve your mixes, make them more transparent, make them punchy, keep watching this video and I'm going to teach you how to do that. I'm going to start from the drop, and the track sounds like that.
Because sometimes people want to copy many different things.
I think that's enough for the track. I really like the vibe of this track, how it sounds, the idea. Yeah, I'm very, very pleased with this result. So now let's talk about saturation, guys. So what is saturation? Saturation basically is distortion, but saturation is a kind of distortion which is very subtle. But you can also have heavy saturation, like distortion, overdrive, things like that. Really depends on the sound you want to get. And now, guys, I want to share some of the techniques which I've learned when I was making this track. So the first concept I want to talk about is that it's better to use group processing instead of individual channels. I wouldn't say that using some processing like compression, saturation, EQing, etc. on individual channels is wrong. In this track, I'm using almost only bus processing. So instead of using plugins on your individual channels, guys, try using them on the bus instead. So for example, the group with the kick and bass, I don't have any compressors at all. When I was mixing my older tracks, I almost always used a compressor on the kick, the bass, basically almost any instrument. But it's much better to use only one compressor for all of your instruments, and it's going to glue them together in a very nice way if you choose the right attack and release and ratio. The second tip is try using saturation instead of compression. I'm going to explain how saturation works just in a second. So let's listen to the kick and the bass, the group. So this is without any saturation. And what saturation does is that it reduces the dynamics of the sound. As you can see, I've split my kick into 3 bands in this saturator, which is a great function. So if you are looking for a great saturator, this plugin is the best choice in my opinion. The first band is the subby part of the kick, and it sounds like that in solo. Now guys, pay attention what happens when I tweak the dynamics knob. So the sound which is too loud, it gets distorted. And there is a huge benefit if you are using saturation instead of compression. And that's because you keep a lot of the dynamics. You don't actually squeeze them as much as you would do with a compressor. So we keep the dynamics, we keep the punch, which is, in my opinion, very important. So the second band is the punchy band, and on its own sounds like that. So if I increase the dynamics, we will get that distorted kind of sound. And finally, the last band is the click. And altogether, one very important thing, guys, when you are using saturator, you should always gain stage your instrument or a sound. Because when we are playing with the dynamics, with the drive, the sound gets louder. And to compensate that, we will need an analyzer. Yes, approximately -7. Yeah, -6, pretty much the same. As you can hear, guys, with the saturation, you can emphasize different parts of your instrument, as in this example, so maybe the subby parts, the punchy parts, the click. The thing I really like in this plugin is that it has the equalizer, which you could use to shape your sound, which is very nice. And you can also add some modulation, but I think in this tutorial it's not very important because we are talking about mixing, not sound design. And now, guys, let's compare the saturation and compression. Now, let's compare the sound. And now the compressor. As you can hear, guys, we lose the subby part and the punch of our kick when we are using compressor. Actually, the compressor is a bit harder to use, and that's because if you use wrong attack and release time, it won't, sound good in the mix. So it's very, very important. Therefore, I think using saturation is a great choice. It's easy to use, and it also keeps that punch of our sound. So this example, the kick. For the bass, the saturation is a great tool to make it more audible in the mix because you emphasize the existing harmonics and you also add some new harmonics. So maybe in the upper register if your bass lacks some of those. So I think we are pretty much done with the kick and bass. Now let's move to the drums. I'm going to show you what I've done. So the drums on their own sound like that. So that's without any saturation, but with a bit of compression and EQ. Not a huge difference, but I could tell that the drums become more glued together. So if you are looking for a way to make your instruments, the groups and mix in general more glued together, but you should use saturation in a smart way because with saturation as well as with the compression, you could just destroy the dynamics of your sound. So that's why you should always be very careful with that. And now I'm going to give you an example, guys, where I destroy my dynamics and make my drums sound flat. I think that could sound okay in some cases, but it's so much better if you use saturation in a subtle way to glue your sound together and shape it so it sounds good in your mix. Now, guys, I'm going to show you what I've done with my instruments.
Because sometime
And now I'm going to mute the saturator. And now the difference is huge. So let's listen together with the drums and with the kick and bass.
Because sometimes people want to copy many different things.
And now again with the saturation.
Because sometimes people want to copy.
I think now the difference is very big, and I could clearly tell that our instruments, when we use saturation on the group, they become glued together. And I'm also using saturation on my effects, basically the same approach. I've split my effects into 3 bands and done some saturation, and yeah, that's it. So yeah, before I end this tutorial, let's summarize what we have learned today, guys. So number 1, saturation can be used both for sound design and mixing. It really depends on the sound you want to get, because sometimes you could use, some extreme settings like a lot of distortion, and with that you could make new sounds. Number 2, try using saturation instead of compression. Yeah, I think that was everything I wanted to share with you guys today. I really hope you could find some value as well as some useful tips and techniques in this video, because I'm trying to share all of my latest knowledge which I get when I'm making the tracks, mixing, sound designing, stuff like that. So I always try to keep you updated, guys, with my knowledge. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.